Welcome to Sinister Stories, where the shadows hold more than just secrets. If you're a fan of the dark and the twisted, you're in the right place. Tonight, we dive into a tale that will send chills down your spine. Before we begin, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss a single spine-tingling story. Being a truck driver for one of the largest logistics companies in America started as a dream job. It offered me financial security, the chance to see the country, and an opportunity to live life on my own terms. For years, I loved the job, until I made one decision that altered my entire perspective. About 6 months ago, I switched to night driving. The roads were quieter, and I could avoid the chaos of daytime traffic. While I missed the scenic views, I figured the trade-off was worth it. What I didn't expect was how quickly things would take a dark turn. It started with subtle oddities, shadows that moved when they shouldn't, unexplainable noises outside my cab, or rest stops that didn't seem to be on any map. But one particular route, I-70 through Colorado, would change everything. That night, I was hauling a load from Las Vegas to Omaha. The route was simple enough, a mostly straight shot along Interstate 70. Colorado's forests were denser than I'd imagined, swallowing any sense of civilization. Towns were few and far between, and those I passed seemed barely alive, with faint lights flickering through the trees like dying fireflies. As my clock ticked toward my mandatory 30-minute break, I cursed myself for not planning my stops. My manager had drilled the importance of route planning into me, but I'd shrugged it off, assuming I'd find a rest area. Just as my tablet pinged, warning me I was nearing my drive limit, a small blue sign appeared. Rest area, 2 miles ahead. Relief washed over me. I crested a hill and the road opened to an off-ramp marked with another sign. Rest area, with an arrow pointing right. I flicked on my blinker and pulled off. The rest stop was desolate. A single truck sat in the far corner with its lights off. The lot itself was eerily empty, devoid of smaller vehicles or even basic amenities like a vending machine or restroom building. Just asphalt, a few picnic tables, and trees everywhere. Parking behind the lone truck, I set my brakes, marked my brake on the tablet, and leaned back. Grabbing a water bottle from my mini fridge, I took a long drink, only to realize my phone had no service. Of course. I sighed, resigned to staring into the darkness until my break ended. That's when I noticed something strange. A laminated piece of paper taped to the dash of my truck. I hadn't seen it before, and I definitely didn't put it there. Frowning, I reached for it. The paper was simple, with a typed list of rules. Rules for stopping at night. Along I-70. Do not exit your truck unless absolutely necessary. If you see another vehicle, do not attempt to interact with its occupants. Ignore any noises coming from the trees. If you hear a knock on your door, do not respond. If you see someone approaching your truck, leave immediately. Under no circumstances should you open your doors after midnight. If you see it, don't look directly at it. Just drive. A chill ran down my spine. Was this a joke? Some kind of weird prank? I glanced out my windshield at the other truck. Its passenger side door was open. Panic prickled at the edge of my mind. Was someone inside? Were they hurt? Against my better judgment, I grabbed my flashlight and metal lever puller, a makeshift weapon, and stepped outside. The night air was bitterly cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of my cab. The sound of gravel crunching under my boots seemed far louder than it should have been, amplified by the eerie silence of the forest around me. I hesitated, clutching my flashlight and lever puller tightly, as I stared at the truck in front of me. Its passenger side door was wide open, dark and inviting like a gaping wound. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Had the driver left it open? Were they somewhere nearby? Or worse, was something waiting for me inside? The strange list of rules taped to my dash flashed in my mind, urging me to turn back. But my curiosity, or stupidity, propelled me forward. I flicked on my flashlight, sweeping the beam across the truck's cab. No movement. The interior looked chaotic, with clothes and papers strewn across the seats and floor. A smell hit me, metallic and sickly sweet. blood. I stopped cold. Every rational part of my brain screamed to get back in my truck and leave, but I couldn't shake the nagging thought, what if someone's hurt? What if they need help? As I climbed onto the truck's running board, the beam of my flashlight illuminated the sleeper berth. My stomach turned, and I nearly dropped the light. A woman's body lay sprawled across the bottom bunk, mangled beyond recognition. Her chest was ripped open, her organs spilling out onto the mattress. Blood soaked the interior, dripping down the walls and pooling on the floor. Her face was frozen in a mask of pure terror, her mouth agape in a silent scream. My legs trembled, and bile rose in my throat. I stumbled backward off the truck, gasping for air. The cool night stung my skin as I leaned against the cab, my mind reeling. What the hell had happened here? I turned to run back to my truck, but I stopped dead in my tracks when I heard a sound. A faint rhythmic thumping coming from the trees. My heart pounded in my chest as I whipped my flashlight toward the noise. Nothing. Just endless, suffocating darkness. And then I heard it. Footsteps. From the far end of the rest stop, a figure emerged, barely illuminated by the glow of my truck's headlights. It was a man, tall and lanky, stumbling toward me. His clothes were torn and soaked with blood, and his face was pale and gaunt. "Hey!" I called out, my voice shaky. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The man didn't respond. He just kept walking, his movements jerky and unnatural. Panic surged through me as I realized he wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, toward the trees. "It's coming," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Oh God, it's coming." I followed his gaze, and my blood ran cold. A second figure emerged from the shadows, but it wasn't a man. It wasn't human. The creature stood nearly 12 feet tall, its limbs impossibly long and thin like tree branches. Its skin was mottled gray, stretched tightly over a skeletal frame. Its head was too large for its body, with wide, hollow eyes and a permanent, grotesque grin. Jagged teeth jutted from its mouth, glinting in the dim light. The creature moved with an unsettling grace, skipping toward the man like a child at play. Its long, spindly arms swung at its sides, ending in clawed hands that looked sharp enough to tear through steel. The man turned and ran, his screams echoing through the night. The creature followed, its strides impossibly long. It closed the distance in seconds, grabbing the man by the shoulder and lifting him off the ground as if he weighed nothing. "No!" the man screamed, thrashing in its grasp. "Please, don't!" The creature plunged one clawed hand into the man's chest, silencing him instantly. Blood sprayed across the pavement as the creature ripped the man apart, tossing his lifeless body to the ground like a broken toy. I stood frozen, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. The creature turned its hollow eyes toward me, its grin widening. It began to skip toward me, its claws clicking against the asphalt. Adrenaline kicked in, and I bolted for my truck. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me, and fumbled with the keys. The creature was only yards away now, its long limbs swaying unnaturally as it closed the gap. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the truck into gear. The creature reached out, its clawed hands scraping against the driver's side door as I peeled out of the lot. The sound of metal screeching filled my ears, and I saw its grinning face in my side mirror, growing smaller as I sped down the on-ramp. For a moment, I thought I was safe. But then I felt a heavy thud against the trailer, followed by a long, ear-piercing scrape. My eyes darted to the mirror, and I saw the creature clinging to the back of the truck, its claws digging into the metal. I pushed the accelerator to the floor, the engine roaring as I raced down the highway. The creature clung tightly, its hollow eyes locked on mine. It was playing with me. The truck's engine roared as I floored the accelerator, the tires humming against the asphalt as I pushed it to its limits. My eyes darted between the road ahead and the side mirrors, where the creature clung to the back of the trailer like a grotesque spider. Its elongated limbs dug deep into the metal, and its hollow grinning face never wavered, its gaze fixed on me. A million thoughts surged through my head. What does it want? Why won't it let go? How the hell do I get away from this thing? The highway stretched on, dark and empty. My headlights illuminated nothing but the endless strip of road and towering trees on either side. I prayed for another vehicle, Someone, anyone who might help. But the night offered no saviors, only isolation. A metallic groan reverberated through the truck as the creature began to climb. I watched in horror as one clawed hand reached over the edge of the trailer, followed by its grotesque face peeking over the top. "No, no, no," I muttered, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The thing pulled itself onto the roof of the trailer, its unnaturally long limbs sprawling out like some horrific marionette. It moved with a sickening ease, crawling toward the cab as the truck sped down the highway. I swerved, jerking the wheel to the left and then right, trying to shake it loose. The trailer bucked and swayed, the tires skidding dangerously close to the edge of the asphalt. The creature barely reacted, its claws digging in to keep its hold. The CB radio crackled to life, static hissing through the speakers. Then a voice, a deep, distorted growl came through. "You can't outrun me." I felt my stomach drop. The voice wasn't coming from the CB. It was inside my head. "Get out of my head!" I screamed, slamming my fist against the dashboard. The creature let out a guttural, inhuman laugh, its grin widening as it crept closer. My eyes caught sight of an upcoming sign. Exit 137, Narrow Ridge Road. It was a long shot, but staying on the highway wasn't an option. I veered onto the off-ramp, the truck lurching as I took the curve too fast. The tires screeched, and for a moment I thought I might tip over. But the truck held, barreling onto the narrow, winding road. The forest loomed closer now, the trees forming an oppressive tunnel of darkness around me. The creature didn't flinch. It clung to the roof like a parasite, its claws scraping against the metal as it shifted its weight. I could hear it moving, the sound sending chills down my spine. I had to think fast. How do you fight something like this? My mind raced as I scanned the road ahead. Then I saw it. A low-hanging branch stretched across the road like nature's barricade. It was risky, but I didn't have a choice. I gunned the engine, aiming straight for the branch. The truck roared forward, and I ducked low as the branch scraped across the cab. The impact was loud and jarring, and for a brief, glorious moment, the scraping sounds on the roof stopped. I glanced in the mirror and saw the creature sprawled on the road behind me, its limbs bent at unnatural angles. I didn't celebrate. I knew it wasn't over. I kept my foot on the accelerator, desperate to put as much distance between us as possible. The narrow road twisted and turned, the trees pressing in closer with every mile. My hands trembled on the wheel and sweat dripped down my forehead despite the cold. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it. The creature was running alongside the truck, its grotesque form illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the trees. Its movements were impossibly fast, its limbs stretching and bending like rubber. It wasn't just running, it was playing with me, darting in and out of the shadows, always keeping pace. My heart pounded as I swerved left, trying to shake it off. But it was relentless, its grin never fading as it lunged toward the passenger side. With a deafening crash, the thing slammed into the door, its claws piercing the metal. The truck swerved wildly as I fought to keep control, the steering wheel jerking in my hands. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, slamming my fist against the horn. The creature let out a bone-chilling screech, its hollow eyes locking onto mine through the passenger side window. I could see its teeth now, jagged and dripping with something dark and viscous. I did the only thing I could think of. I slammed on the brakes. The truck screeched to a halt, the tires skidding on the asphalt. The creature wasn't prepared for the sudden stop, and it was thrown forward, tumbling across the road like a rag doll. I didn't wait to see where it landed. I shifted into reverse, the trailer groaning as I backed up. My eyes darted between the mirrors and the road ahead, searching for any sign of movement, and then I saw it. The creature stood up slowly, its limbs snapping back into place with sickening cracks. Its grin was gone now, replaced by something far worse, an expression of pure rage. I slammed the truck back into drive and floored it, the engine roaring as I sped forward. The creature charged at me, its long limbs propelling it faster than seemed possible. I braced myself, gripping the wheel tightly as the truck barreled toward it. At the last second, the creature leapt into the air, landing on the hood with a deafening thud. Its claws slammed into the windshield, cracking the glass. I screamed, swerving wildly as it clawed its way toward me, its hollow eyes filled with malice. I was out of options. The windshield groaned under the weight of the creature's claws. the spider-webbed cracks spreading rapidly. Its face was inches away from mine now, that permanent grin twisting into something more menacing. Its hollow eyes locked onto me as it slammed its fist against the glass, each strike reverberating through the cab. I swerved left and right, trying to shake it off, but it clung on like a leech. The narrow forest road twisted and turned, and every second felt like an eternity. "Think, damn it, think!" I shouted, my voice barely audible over the chaos. Then I remembered the switch. My truck was equipped with high-pressure windshield washer nozzles, a feature I'd never thought much of until now. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. I reached for the lever and yanked it. A burst of liquid shot out onto the windshield, splattering across the creature's face. It let out an ear-piercing screech, recoiling as the fluid burned its grotesque skin. I realized then that the washer fluid was full of alcohol, a lucky coincidence that seemed to have thrown the creature off balance. Seizing the opportunity, I slammed on the brakes again. The creature flew forward, tumbling off the hood and onto the road. This time I didn't hesitate. I floored the gas pedal, aiming the truck straight at it. The headlights illuminated its twisted form as it scrambled to its feet, but it wasn't fast enough. The truck slammed into the creature with a sickening crunch, the impact sending it flying into the ditch. I didn't stop. I couldn't. My only thought was to get as far away as possible. The road narrowed further, the trees forming an impenetrable wall on either side. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my eyes darting between the road and the mirrors. The creature was gone, at least for now, but I knew it wasn't over. The road ahead split into two paths, and I hesitated for a moment. There were no signs, no indications of where either path might lead. The left looked slightly wider, more traveled, while the right disappeared into the shadows. I chose the left. The truck rumbled forward, the tension in my chest easing slightly as the road opened up a bit. But the relief was short-lived. The CB radio crackled to life again, that same distorted voice filling the cab. "You can't escape. This is my domain." The voice sent a chill down my spine, but it wasn't just the words. It was the sound of it. It was as if the forest itself was speaking, its branches and leaves carrying the message. The engine began to sputter. "No, no, no, not now!" I yelled, glancing at the gauges. Everything looked fine, but the truck slowed regardless, its power draining as if something was pulling it back. The headlights flickered, plunging the road into darkness. Panic surged through me as the truck coasted to a stop, the engine silent. I fumbled with the ignition, turning the key repeatedly, but it wouldn't start. Then the silence came. Not the kind of silence you'd find in a quiet room, but an oppressive, suffocating stillness that pressed down on me from all sides. No wind, no rustling leaves, just nothing. I grabbed my flashlight and the tire iron from under the seat. My gut told me to stay in the truck, but my instinct screamed that staying put wasn't an option. I stepped out, the cold night air biting at my skin. The flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but the empty road and the dense forest beyond. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. The only response was the crunch of gravel under my boots as I moved toward the front of the truck. The hood was dented, but there was no sign of the creature. Then I heard it. A low guttural growl echoed from the forest. My flashlight darted toward the sound, illuminating the underbrush. The shadows seemed to shift, twisting and writhing as if alive. "Who's there?" I demanded, raising the tire iron. The growl grew louder and the shadows began to take shape. First one limb, then another, until the creature emerged from the darkness. It was different now. Its body was larger, more twisted, its grin wider and more malevolent. The wounds from earlier had healed, leaving its skin even more grotesque. It didn't rush this time. It moved slowly, deliberately, its hollow eyes fixed on me. I backed away, my heart pounding. "Stay back!" I shouted, swinging the tire iron. The creature stopped, tilting its head as if amused. Then it spoke, not in my head this time, but aloud. "Why run? The forest always takes what it's owed." I didn't wait for it to move. I bolted back to the truck, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My hands shook as I tried the ignition again, praying for the engine to turn over. The creature lunged at the truck, its claws raking across the door with a deafening screech. The glass shattered and I screamed, ducking as shards flew everywhere. The engine roared to life. I didn't think. I just drove. The tires screeched as I floored the accelerator, the truck lurching forward. The creature clung to the side, its claws digging into the metal as it tried to pull itself up. I swerved violently, slamming it against the trees lining the road. It howled in pain, losing its grip and tumbling back into the darkness. But I knew it wasn't gone. The road ahead opened up into a clearing, and in the distance I saw lights, an old service station, its neon sign flickering weakly. Hope surged through me as I sped toward it, but the growl from behind reminded me that I wasn't safe yet. The flickering neon sign ahead was like a beacon in the void, drawing me closer. Willow Creek Service, it read, its letters barely glowing through decades of neglect. My truck roared toward it, the creature's growls still audible above the engine noise. It was gaining again. I swerved the truck erratically, trying to throw it off balance. The creature's claws scraped against the metal, leaving long gashes that glinted in the pale light. I clenched my teeth, my focus shifting between the road and the rear-view mirrors. Finally, the service station's gravel lot came into view. Without thinking, I yanked the wheel hard to the right, sending the truck skidding to a halt in the middle of the lot. The creature was flung off, landing with a dull thud near the pumps. I jumped out, clutching the tire iron and flashlight, scanning the area. The building was small, its windows covered in grime, and the faint glow of a single bulb flickered above the entrance. "Help!" I shouted, pounding on the door. "Somebody, please!" No response. Behind me, a low growl emerged from the shadows. I spun around, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The creature rose slowly, its grin impossibly wide. Blood dripped from its claws, pooling on the gravel below. "This is it," I muttered. The thing advanced, its lanky limbs twisting unnaturally with each step. I backed toward the building, my breath visible in the frigid air. Suddenly, the door creaked open. An older man stepped out, his face shadowed under the brim of a wide hat. His eyes scanned the scene, landing on me, then shifting to the creature. "Get inside," he said, his voice calm but firm. I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted through the doorway, the man slamming it shut behind me. "What the hell is that thing?" I gasped, leaning against the counter. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he locked several heavy bolts across the door and pulled down a metal grate. "You brought it here," he finally said, his tone accusatory. "I didn't have a choice," I shouted. "It was chasing me on the highway." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "They always do when you break the rules." "Rules? What rules?" He gestured to a faded list on the wall, written in a spidery hand. My stomach dropped as I read it. "Do not drive I-70 between dusk and dawn. If you must, never stop in the forest. If you see a rest area, keep driving. If your CB radio activates on its own, ignore it. If the road splits, always take the darker path." The last rule hit me like a freight train. I'd chosen the wider path, thinking it was safer. "You didn't follow the last one, did you?" the man asked, his tone a mix of frustration and pity. I shook my head, my voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know." "You know now," he said, peering out the window. The creature was pacing in the lot, its grin faltering slightly. It seemed wary of the building, circling like a predator deciding when to strike. "What do we do?" I asked. "We wait," he said, pulling a shotgun from behind the counter. "This place is warded, but it won't hold forever." I stared at the weapon, my mind racing. "You're going to fight it?" "Not fight," he corrected. "Distract." The man turned to me, his eyes piercing. "When I go out there, you get back in your truck and drive. Don't stop, don't look back, and no matter what you hear, don't turn around." "Are you insane?" I snapped. "That thing will kill you." He smirked faintly. "Been doing this for 30 years, son. If it doesn't kill me tonight, it'll try again tomorrow." Before I could argue, he unlocked the door, stepped out, and slammed it shut behind him. The creature immediately turned its attention to him, its grin returning. "Come on, you ugly son of a bitch," the man shouted, firing a warning shot into the air. The thing lunged at him, and I watched in horror as the two disappeared into the darkness. For a moment I was frozen. The silence returned, save for the occasional muffled growl or gunshot. Then I remembered his words. Don't stop. Don't look back. I ran to my truck, climbing into the cab and slamming the door shut. The engine roared to life and I peeled out of the lot, gravel spraying behind me. The road stretched endlessly before me, the forest looming on either side. I gripped the wheel tightly, my eyes darting to the mirrors despite myself. I saw nothing at first, but then, in the distance, a figure emerged. It wasn't the man. The creature was back, its lanky limbs bounding after me. It was faster than before, closing the gap with terrifying speed. I floored the gas, the truck shuddering as it pushed past its limits. My eyes flicked to the GPS. It showed the nearest city just a few miles away. Come on, I muttered, urging the truck forward. The lights of civilization appeared on the horizon, a faint but hopeful glow. The creature was still behind me, its distorted frame illuminated in the taillights. As I reached the outskirts of the city, the creature stopped abruptly, letting out a guttural screech that rattled the windows. It stood there, watching as I drove into the safety of the lights. I didn't stop until I reached a busy truck stop on the edge of town. Parking the truck, I collapsed against the wheel, my body trembling. I never saw the man again, nor did I ever take Interstate 70 at night after that. But every so often I think about that creature and the rules I broke, and I wonder, was it really over or is it just waiting for me to slip up again? Thank you for watching Sinister Stories. If you enjoyed the tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps the channel grow and allows me to keep creating the chilling stories you love. Spread the fright, share the night.